This is the ClarkCast podcast on clarkcast.com.
3, 2, 1.
This, Saving the Republic, is one broadcast at a time. The ClarkCast with Matt Clark.
We should have known it. You never want to miss a single week of this show. If you were listening the last few weeks, even though they were recorded shows for the holiday season, Matt Clark and I had been speaking about Disney, the new Star Wars film, and the banning of toy guns at Disney World. And Matt also revealed that he was going to go to Disney World this week. And this is Rich Hoffman on covering for him, which was planned quite some time, so that he could go down to Disney World and do a marathon that he does there. I just have it fresh off the press that Matt got himself into a little trouble. Apparently, inspired by the conversation we had here at WAAM, he went down and has now engaged in some arguments with some of the brain-dead Disney employees over their toy gun policy. And apparently he's in some trouble. So he'll have to tell you about that when he comes back. But yeah, that just happened. So we all want to wish him well and make sure that no trouble comes to him and he gets back here safe and doesn't end up in jail. So it's an honor to be back to host this show. It's always a lot of fun to do it, and I have a very fun hour planned. So you might want to listen closely. We have a with all the events of this week and the Obama crying over the executive orders that he signed, and then the big CNN town hall event that happened, I think 2 days ago. 2 days ago. This is a good time to talk a little bit about guns from the other side, and the guest I'll have on shortly will definitely articulate a different side of the story. So with that, I need to kind of give a brief introduction. We talk a little bit about the politics that I'm often involved in. I have, of course, the Overman Warriors Wisdom blog site that has millions and millions and millions of words of thought, contemplation on it. If you want to know about anything, just type Overman Warriors Wisdom, and then whatever it is you want to know more about, whether it's how much salt to put on steak or what's the cause of all the current crisis in the United States, just type that into Google and you'll see all my thousands of articles on those types of topics. One thing we don't talk much about, though, is my history with the Western arts. It's something I've been involved in for several decades, more than 3 decades, as a matter of fact. And specifically, if you want to see more about what I'm getting ready to talk about, just Google or go to YouTube and type my name, Rich Hoffman, and the word bullwhips, and you'll see hundreds of videos about me doing bullwhips and competitions and speed and accuracy contests, quick draw contests, putting out candles with bullwhips. I've done that for a long time, very long time, and I'm pretty good at it. And it's been fun to be one of the few people in the world who can do those kinds of things. And I've enjoyed that, but I like to push myself and always learn new things. And it's one thing to be one of the best people in the world at something, but it's another thing to be good at that and then to expand outside your comfort zone and enter into something that's a little bit different. And for a long time, we had competitions up at where Annie Oakley was born, which is Dark County, Ohio, in Greenville. And every summer, I look forward to the competitions we have there with Wild West performers that come from all over the United States to celebrate Little Sure Shot's legacy as one of the first women to enter something that, way ahead of her time, was a dominant shooter in the shooting sports. And it just always recenters me to go to that competition. With us at that competition is a group called the Ohio Fast Draw Association. And I've watched the shooters there do their thing, between our competitions, and it's something I've always kind of wanted to get into, but it looked pretty hard to get involved because it's you have equipment costs, and how in the world do you shoot that much ammunition to get that good? Because a lot of these guys shoot within a quarter of a second, drawing from a holster, cocking the hammer, and pointing at a target and shooting and hitting that target in a quarter of a second. That's really, really fast. And it just amazes me to watch these guys do this. And you wonder how much money they have to spend to go through that much ammunition to get that good. So I've sort of watched them with admiration for, well over a decade. But now I made a point that I'm at a point in my life where I wanted to do it myself and embark in something and see how good I could get at that. So I started watching them a little more closely and started asking questions and doing some research. And I promised myself that if I got to a certain point in my life, that I would embark on that journey. And I got to that point in my life. I achieved a milestone that I had set for myself. Decided I was going to go ahead and embark on it. And so I started calling up and finding out how I can get more involved. And I called up I started checking out the Ohio Fast Draw Association, the people I've been watching. I got in touch with the World Fast Draw Association, kind of check them out and see if, what they were all about. And then I got in touch with the Cowboy Fast Draw Association, which is based in Nevada. And I wasn't sure who to go with and who to join up with, how to learn and how to go about it, just like anybody else. And as I started peeling back the onion a little bit, I found out that the Cowboy Fast Draw Association was really, really organized, much more so than I anticipated. Because again, I've known Western artists for a long time, and they tend to be pretty laid back and kind of loose with things, because that's part of the cowboy mystique, I suppose, is a little bit of a laid-back atmosphere. But that's not necessarily what I found with the Cowboy Fast Draw Association. I found a group that was concerned with NRA membership, and it was very organized with the way they presented material and their training and the approach to a growing sport that is really beginning to take off in the United States. And it's largely because of the guests that I'm going to have on at the back of a break that we're going to go through in a minute, but not quite yet. So I started ordering my material from them so I could start practicing, and that includes targets and timers and guns and holsters, because all this is specialized equipment. And what I found when I opened the box that came from Cowboy Fast Draw Association was an amazing array of really well put together equipment, organized so that basically I think it's the best secret in shooting. And I don't care what you're shooting. I don't care what your hobby is as far as shooting, whether it's long distance target shooting or just going down to the range. You can shoot in Cowboy Fast Draw for cheaper than what you shoot a 22, or we used to be able to shoot a 22 for. And that's how these guys get so good at it, is because you can actually get ammunition from this Cowboy Fast Draw Association, load it yourself, very easy to do. They pretty much supply almost everything you need except for the shotgun primers. And it's very, very much easier to get involved with than I would have anticipated. Otherwise, I probably would have done it a decade ago. So a lot of that is we talk here on this show a lot about management and how the government doesn't manage resources very well, and that's the difference between private sector and public sector ownership of things or management of things. What you find with the Cowboy Fast Draw Association is, what I've discovered, is a very well managed organization that it has the potential to be quite explosive. And the guest that I'm going to have on, his name's Cal Elrich, and his name's actually, he goes by Quick Cal. He has a number of world records, and he's a four-time shooting champion over many decades. So when we come back from a break, we'll talk to him personally and get into some more detail about how you can get involved. But I really want to get more specific into something, because he's given lots of interviews and he's done this for many years. And one thing that he wants to articulate, which he shares with me, is sort of a philosophy of the Old West. And he particularly in the Cowboy Fast Draw Association frames as one of the values the cowboy way. If you Google the cowboy way, you'll find the old Woody Harrelson comedy from the 90s and not much else. So what I want to talk about for the rest of this show is how Cowboy Fast Draw is emerging, and What is the cowboy way, and what value does that have to apparently what was missing from Obama's town hall speech the other night, where he clearly does not understand the impact that guns have on American culture, not just from a self-defense standpoint, but from an essential philosophy. So let's take a soft break here, and we'll come back with Quick Cow.
Saving the Republic, one broadcast at a time. This is the Clarkcast with Matt Clark. Bringing a surge of energy to the airwaves. This is the Clarkcast with Matt Clark.
You know, the safe thing in life to do is to, if you get good at something where you're one of the best people there are in the world at it, the safe thing is to just stay with that and hang your hat on that and to just go with it. But I'm not like that. I don't particularly respect people who do that. I like to always push myself. It's good to be a noob because that's how you work hard to become a master at things. And over many years of working through problems, you become much better. And Quick Cal, you're one of those people who have never turned away from a challenge and have spent a lifetime in the shooting field becoming better and better. And you're now what I consider to be one of the finest people, an example of what an American really is. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you doing this morning, Rich?
Hey, I'm great. I have to say to you, I met it on the last segment when I said I think the Cowboy Fast Draw Association probably is the best secret in shooting. I've known a lot of different shooting sports. I've known a lot of shooters. I don't know that anybody really has discovered this whole secret of wax bullets and the way you have a targeting system set up within the Cowboy Fast Draw Association where you can actually shoot in your garage safely with no trouble, no disturbing your neighbors. But it has all the effectiveness of going to a range, and you can actually do this in suburban America, and it's quite amazing. I have to thank you for coming up with it. Well,
fast draw has been around since the 1950s, and it really got started around 1955, and it was like it was a real fad back then. There were 100,000 people doing it across the country. In fact, that's why Colt started producing the Peacemaker again.
Right.
And so, and then it just never could get organized right. It just, got subject to politics and all these kind of things. And it's been around for 60 years. And then it just kind of, as the TV Westerns would go and all that's how the sport went. And then it kind of dribbled down to just under 1,000 diehards and through the late 60s and 70s and stuff. And so I didn't actually invent it, but I got involved with it when I was a teenager in 1968. And it literally changed my life because I was exposed to some really fine people. And they showed me, they provided a fine example of being gentlemen and ladies, and gave me something to sink my teeth in as a youngster, and I credit it with keeping me straightened out all through the drug era and
right.
The 60s and 70s were, and it gave me something positive to base my life on, and taught me so many life lessons, and I just want to pass that on to the people, this generation, and we have a great youth training program. We start kids out at 7 and 8 years old, teach them gun safety, and because our organization is safety first, fun second, competition third.
Right. It's the cowboy way. And back in the days that you're talking about, in the 50s, was the heyday of the Westerns. Hollywood produced hundreds of them. It seemed like every year, and it was part of our culture, part of what made us special. When you talk about American exceptionalism, some parts of the political spectrum don't believe it exists. But I think you can see that the position of the United States within the world says there's something special about it. And I would often attribute that to this mysterious cowboy way that seems to have been lost to our culture presently. And I can tell you, I've been involved with the Western arts for many years. Again, you probably heard that I was doing bullwhips and all that, and I largely got involved in that because you could do it in your backyard and not, you didn't have to worry about hurting anybody. And we had a thing out in Vegas we did once a year, and gradually in the early 2000s, that sort of died away, and it was hard because some of the older people that used to do it, stuntmen like Alex Green, passed away, and everybody lost focus, and it drifted.
I knew him.
And it takes a lot of management to pull these people together because a lot of it's done with hard work, and you don't get a lot of love for it. A lot of people squabble. A lot of people want to compete just so they can get a trophy and have something. But it's to gather the essence of what it really takes to really become part of the Western arts and what it always meant to our society is difficult. And I have to say that out of everybody I've checked out, and I didn't mean that you started it, but you've certainly been a huge part of benefacting from it, but then carrying it on to where we can actually pass it on to a new generation.
Well, that's right. And see, what happened was, I got in the fast draw at a young age, had a great run at it, won 3 world championships. The last one in that era being 1982. I decided to go on to new challenges. Got into IPSC shooting, which became USPSA, and dedicated my life to that for almost a decade. Was on the United States pistol team for USPSA in 1990. But you know what? I went back to fast draw because I thought, wow, this is the most promotable gun sport in the world, in the sense that, like you were saying in the earlier segment, you can do this in your own garage and become a world-class shooter.
Yeah.
You got to go shoot some matches, learn what to practice, but you can really work those things out in your garage. And what other shooting sport can you do that? None.
You can't. You really can. I know that. I know doing your own reloads for like going to the target range for live loads. That's a lot of people consider that a very soothing exercise to load your stuff up on the presses and push in your own primers and measure out your powder and all that. That's all good, but you basically, for this sport, you've simplified that to just a simple punch in some wax into a little bit of brass, slide in a shotgun primer, and you can turn around and shoot and clean your gun all day long in your garage. And I found it since I received my first package from Cowboy Fast Draw Association back in the fall. I've found it to be one of the most joyful things that I've done in years, because it's not so much the shooting. I mean, the shooting's always fun, but it's the process of actually caring for all the equipment and going through the process of reloading between shots and just putting your times up on a little spreadsheet so you can watch your progress over time. Those little things have really made me happy. It's been a joyful experience.
Well, I'll tell you something now. Where Cowboy Fast Draw really got going was, well, first, SAS formed in 1985. Yeah. And SAS did so much for the Western sports. I mean, they, suddenly clothing manufacturers were making Western clothing again, and so many more manufacturers started making high-quality, Colt clones, copies of Colts, and Ruger started making the Ruger Vaquero, great firearms, and all of these kind of things. And so, SAS really brought that on in a real big way, and I got involved with cowboy action shooting heavily in the mid-'90s, and I'm honored to say that I became a national champion in that sport in 2003. But I'm telling you, the SAS really got everybody's attention on Western shooting sports again. And then an old friend of mine, who was the hotel manager at the First Gold Hotel and Casino in Deadwood, who was a longtime fast draw shooter before that, and he'd organized some world championships in Deadwood. Well, he ended up founding the Cowboy Fast Draw Association. He's the actual founder of the organization in 2002 in Deadwood. I was one of his advisors, technical advisors on equipment, guns, all those sorts of things. And but when I saw what he was working on there, I became extremely interested in it. And I took on a partner, Shoot Magazine, and we made him an offer. Partnership offer in late 2005. Ended up, he felt he didn't have the time to manage the organization because so many people start these things and then they find out how much work they are and how much investment of time and money and talent it is. And so we ended up just purchasing the thing from him April of '06. And then Shoot Magazine ran on hard times because of the economy, and I ended up buying their share out in 2007 and become a family-owned business, basically. It's an LLC, is what it is. So it is run in a business-like fashion. And,
well, I'll tell you what, it shows. And I think the way that you're running it gives it the ability to continue and actually expand. And I think when we get back from the, we're going to have the bottom of the news hour, but when we come back, I want to talk about the Cowboy Way and how that directly applies to the Second Amendment, and how participating in something like the Cowboy Fast Draw Association can help you become acquainted with the philosophy that has been lost in American exceptionalism. So let's take a few moments, and we'll see you on the backside.
Clarkcast with Matt Clark.
You know, since I was in the 5th grade, I've wore a cowboy hat or some variation of a cowboy hat everywhere I've ever went publicly from that time to now, and I'm 47 currently. And it's not because I didn't really have any real influence to tell me to do that. It was sort of an innate thing. I always loved Westerns, even as a little kid. I did have two grandparents that had their own farms, so there was a little bit of that. But I lived pretty much in a suburban area that didn't really require cowboy type attire. It's just something I did because it was an innate yearning for a philosophy that I was looking for. So it surprised me, and I've participated in Western arts for a long time because I wanted to be close to that Cowboy Way philosophy. It's something that, to me, is an essential American, very unique American philosophy. It's at the foundation of the Second Amendment debate, and you have to understand it clearly to really get a little bit about what America is and why it's different than other places. So when I joined the Cowboy Fast Draw Association, literally this year, or actually the fall, right before Christmas. And I started practicing to learn a new skill in the Western arts. I was surprised to learn that the person who currently directs the Cowboy Fast Draw Association specifically wants to maintain and carry on to new generations what the Cowboy Way is. So, quick, Cal, world champion shooter, what is the Cowboy Way?
Well, I tell you, I heard you say earlier you tried to Google it and you couldn't find it.
Right.
Because the Cowboy Way, you know, it's really, you know, it's kind of like it's about handshakes, camaraderie, a man's word, morality, friendship, fair play, honest competition. And the Cowboy Way, you know, it's an action indeed and requires no further explanation. You know, that's kind of right out of our handbook because you either get that or you don't. And it's, in my opinion, it's kind of like, you know, related to the golden rule, and which is doing just treat others like you want to be treated. You know, let's put it that way. I mean, it's put yourself in other people's places, you know, and how you're treating them, and is that how you would like to be treated?
Right. And here's if you look at other sports like football, basketball, soccer, whatever it is, most of those sports have a foundation rooted in some sort of warfare, you know, whether it's inherited from Europe or wherever it may be. Most of those games started as a form of warfare. And the competition, the creation of competition, evokes values that our society then likes. You know, like we always talk about teamwork being important. We put our kids in sports and that kind of stuff to imprint on them these values of some sort of teamwork, working with others, winning, losing, poorly or well. That's what competition evokes. And I would say that what's important about Cowboy Fast Draw, and something that we've lost because, like you said, there used to be a lot of people who did it because Westerns promoted it. Everybody wanted to work a 6-gun and learn how to spin it or shoot it, or at least be comfortable with it because they saw that in the Western heroes that they saw on the silver screen. But I can tell you that when I'm shooting with the targeting equipment supplied by Cowboy Fast Draw Association, and I'm using wax bullets, and I'm loading, and I have it in my holster, and I'm working through the process of doing. I'm not thinking of shooting anybody. It doesn't even cross my mind. I'm thinking of how can I get faster, and how can I make this work smoother, and getting to know all the mechanics of the thing. It never comes up that, and even though that the sport may have started out of a good guy fighting down a bad guy in a dusty street somewhere in a duel, we all know that didn't happen quite like that. But this sport evolved out of the love of that mythology and the desire to have that level of competition, which evokes all the values you were talking about, which I would say is why we had a lot of that. Why we could say we don't have as many values now that we had perhaps maybe 30 or 40 years ago.
Well, what you first described was team sports.
Right.
And, you go to even at high school. I go to a high school baseball game, and you got the parents yelling at the coach to put their kid in. You got the coach yelling at the umpire, and all the parents yelling. Everybody yells at the umpire. And if the kid commits a foul in a baseball or a football game and gets away with it, that's a good thing. See, I mean, this is team sports. But in individual sports, like, our sport, Cowboy Fast Draw, most all the shooting sports are individual sports. And there's this honor. There's a sportsmanship between the competitors.
Yes.
And, and I encountered that also in, for instance, high school golf. My daughter was ranked third in the state in high school golf. And the kids had a sense of honor in that game too. But you get into team sports, that's a different thing. But we have, your alias is Cliffhanger.
Right.
Okay, and as a member of CFDA, all members get an alias. And it's a persona, but what happens is, and I've seen this in no other shooting sports actually, or any other sport period, is we shoot, you're practicing in your garage, and this is wonderful, but the real magic is at the tournaments, because it's the computer spits out the rounds. You end up, round one you'll draw a certain opponent. You go up and you shake their hand, you wish them well, and you mean it, because that they call your name out over a PA system, even though it's your alias. You still have a lot of pride in that.
Right.
And so you go up on the line, you put it all on the line, you do your best, win, lose, or draw, you leave it on the line.
Right.
And there is this certain bond, and you're going to experience this when you really start going to some title championships.
Mm-hmm.
There is a bond that is created between you and your opponent, a respect, and you shake hands when you're done, and you look each other in the eye, and you go, "Good round," and there's it's almost hard to describe the bond that's created. And so what happens is you are making some of the best friends of your life up there, even though you're trying to compete against them and put an X on them in that round. Right. They respect you for that. And it's something that's really hard to describe unless you experience it.
So what we're talking about here is achieving the cowboy way. People often, I hear it a lot. I get accused because of some of the things I get involved in. I get accused of shooting from the hip a lot, of cowboying it. Slang terms that have been thrown at me and the way I do things sometimes professionally, that is associated with recklessness or not thinking things through. I know you're involved. You're a council member, aren't you?
Yes, I'm a councilman, which I'm a strange breed because I'm also a real estate developer and home builder.
Gotcha. So that explains a lot, actually, which is good. But when you start dealing with people who like to hide behind paperwork and hide behind procedures and processes because there's they might be a timid personality. We've had, as governments expanded over the years, and the desire to differentiate individualism from collective efforts, the term cowboying has been used to kind of slang people who go on their own or who don't function well in a team environment, and then that's been kind of broadcast as a negative. And to me, sometimes shooting from the hip, you can do a lot very accurately if you're good. And it depends on how your brain's wired. And one thing you do in Cowboy Fast Draw is you do shoot from the hip and you shoot accurately a little wax bullet at a 2-foot target at 15 to 21 feet. That doesn't necessarily mean shooting from the hip is a negative, but in our culture presently, it is. And it's if you can do that with a gun, you should be able to think decisively in any endeavor you do. But it all starts with the kind of values and sports that you participate in, and how you wire your brain and the way you associate with other people.
Well, anything that has been worthwhile for people to earn and accomplish in their life, there's an element of risk in it, isn't it?
Yes.
There's an element of taking a chance and putting it all out there and going for it.
Yep.
And
if you're not risking something, you're not living.
Yeah. See, bureaucrats, they cover their butts. Okay, they never take a chance at anything. That's why it's so hard to get anything done in government.
That's right.
But private sector, they stick it out and go for it, and that's why they accomplish things. And yes, you can lose if you take a risk, but you know what? You ride them till she bucks you. You keep getting back on. And some of the most successful people in the world only became successful after many failures.
You betcha. Hey, that's good stuff. When we come back from a short break, I want to talk more about how people can get involved in Cowboy Fast Draw. I want to talk about how they can get their own shooting range in their garage, and we'll talk a little bit more about the specifics. But I'll have to say, what you're saying is 100% correct, and really how you approach life has a lot to do with the kind of sports you play. And Cowboy Fast Draw is one way to really get your mind back into something that can make you and help you in other ways in your life that you may not have foreseen. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be back in a moment.
This is the Clarkcast with Matt Clark. The Clarkcast. Like the show on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/Clarkcast.
For me, a 6-gun Vaquero is probably the best embodiment of what it means to have the cowboy way as the roots of American culture, and to understand what those roots are and how deeply seated they are, and what gave rise to the art that became the American Western. It is really centers around the 6-gun, the single action revolver, from the old Colts to the modern Vaquero, and it using them as a tool of precision brings out in me a philosophy and an understanding that is a key ingredient to what makes us different from everybody else. And when in all Second Amendment debates, you have to understand what that cowboy way is before you can truly get why it's so important to so many people and how to articulate. And one way to articulate that in your own life and bring it to and exercise it on a daily basis is to become involved in an organization like the Cowboy Fast Draw Association, which if you go to their website, which is just type in Cowboy Fast Draw Association or cowboyfastdraw.com, you'll see a very interactive website there, which you manage that quick, Cal, or is it's your wife? A lot of lead.
Well, actually, our daughter, Hannah Calder, manages that website and she also is the editor of our magazine that we put out for our members, the Gunslingers Gazette.
That's a good job with that Gunslingers Gazette. When I was in the Wild West Arts Club, run by Mark Allen down in Vegas.
Yes, I know Mark well.
Do you know Mark?
I know him well. In fact, I was down there performing in that thing in the early 90s.
Okay.
Performing with Joe Bowman.
All right. Oh, I know Joe. Okay.
Yeah, we became lifelong friends until he passed away in '09. But it's just, I remember those days.
So you knew Alex Green too.
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah. So they used to do a nice. I used to look forward to it. They had a nice paper they put out on every couple months, bi-monthly kind of thing, and it was fun. It was fun to read. I enjoyed it a lot. And it wasn't the most sophisticated thing in the world, but it was pretty. I always look forward to it, and I was very relieved to find that you have put out a lot of publications in the Cowboy Fast Draw Association. I've actually enjoyed reading all these Gunslingers gazettes. And it's a great little paper, and it's full of stuff in it. And I just can't say I think that alone is worth the price of the yearly membership. So
don't tell my daughter.
Well, good job to her, because you could tell there's a lot of work put into it. It's definitely a lot of love, and it's just every month I've had it, I've looked forward to it. And I think I have 3 copies now, so that's 6 months worth of stuff. But anyway, you can't go wrong by getting involved. You can get all your supplies through that website, except for the primers. Primers aren't very expensive. They're only like $35 for 1,000, and you can get wax bullets from you and other suppliers, but from you specifically, I think it was like $35-$40 for 1,000. Average out to about 6 cents a shot. And you could shoot all day long, listen to the football game in your garage, and you could do it every day you want to. You don't have to go to the range to pay fees. But of course, there's nothing like actually going to an actual competition, which I can't wait to go and see you and some of the other folks I've been reading about at some of these big competitions, because I just love those kinds of environments. But as far as shooting every day and getting in touch with the Cowboy way and being able to participate in something that is really inherently American, I think that the Cowboy Fast Draw Association is the best secret out there for all shooters, and I'd advise everybody to get involved if you have any hint of an inkling.
Well, we appreciate that. This is a passion. This is a. You've described it well. I mean, we're passionate about this sport. Our whole family is. There's only 2 family-owned sporting association sanctioning bodies that I know of. That is us, and also NASCAR.
Really, I didn't know that.
That is correct, and NASCAR, still around and doing great, much better than we are. But
well, they are doing, but they started from they started in a very modest way of doing business, and started with running moonshine and souping up cars and doing it like that. Humble beginnings definitely migrated into something big. And I have to say, I'm impressed. Another aspect of the Cowboy Fast Draw Association I'm impressed with is that you've been able to team up with big organizations like Cabela's, and you have lots of meetings with Ruger, and you're actually involved with Ruger manufacturing and modifying guns. So you're not a small player in the shooting sports. This isn't just some little group. This is turning out to be quite a large enterprise.
Well, it's we're proud of that. We're so proud, the gun companies, because see, in 2002 we reformed the sport of fast draw with the beginning of the Cowboy Fast Draw Association, because the guns have to be stock guns, which is a big departure from what the sport used to be. And the holsters have to be period holsters, like of patterns that could have been found in the actual Old West. And so we rolled everything back, made it real again. It's all real equipment that would have been available in the Old West. Yep. And so we base our equipment on that. We do not fall prey to all the modern sporting equipment, even from the manufacturers. They'll come out with a gun just because it's available by factory does not make it period correct. And so the manufacturers know, I've talked to all of them, and they understand why we do what we do to keep the guns real and period correct, and they actually support it.
Well, you see a movement happening recently, and I didn't understand it at first, but the whole steampunk movement where you kind of have the Jules Verne meets the Wild West, and because that's inspired from some of the modern films, the desire to kind of step back, I think maybe before the progressive era took over, and get back to what the foundations of America were. And in the steampunk era kind of gives everybody a chance to, I guess, bring their own modern twist to it. But it goes along with what you're saying. I see a hunger out there, but not a lot of art that supports it. Tarantino's making some Westerns or whatever you might call them Westerns. They look like Westerns, but I wouldn't say they are. But that's all some young people have these days. The last people that really made real Westerns is maybe Robert Duvall and Clint Eastwood, Kevin Costner sort of tried to, but nobody's really jumping into it in the modern times like they used to. And
they're making all the dark characters the heroes now. And that's just backwards. It's wrong signal to our society.
Oh, yeah. And I just see a desire to reset the clock a little bit and go back before the 1900s. And, of course, modern politics says, hey, no, we got to keep going, progressing on from where we want. We don't want to be back in those dusty expansionist days. That was bad and evil and vile, and bad things happen, and we don't want to go back to it. But you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's a lot of good things that came from the period of time that you're in Cowboy Fast Draw. You not force people, but you inspire them to dress the period, which is what, 1873 to what, 1900?
Well, yeah, to 1900, but we're not going to kick a person that's dressed like Roy Rogers out, and that had nothing to do with the Old West, you see. You have to allow the interpretation that was brought on by Hollywood.
Right.
Because that's still in the spirit, and you mentioned steampunk, and we're actually kind of going there a little bit because it's got the attention of the 30-year-old kids.
Right.
And they're into this stuff, and we would love them to come over and try Cowboy Fast Draw because, they dress Victorian. They actually do. And that is very 1800s, by the way. And so I think we can get a lot of those kids interested in the sport, and that's important. And so we're kind of going there, and so is SAS, by the way. That's what's kind of the new thing.
Well, that's great. And I'm very happy that you and others are doing it. I think it's an important way to get people to think about what the cowboy way used to be and why it might be important to people in the future, whether it's steampunk, whether it's Cowboy Fast Draw, whether it's just practicing with a 6-gun in SAS or whatever it is you're doing. The way of getting there is definitely important to bringing the individual closer to a system of value that is important to America and what we were and what we strive to always be. Quick Cal, I appreciate that you came on. I appreciate everything that you're doing, and I can't wait to see you on a range. So,
well, hey, Rich,
thanks for coming on.
Visit www.cowboyfastdraw.com.